Science has never been able to answer the simplest question. Why is there something rather than nothing? Well, a new paper just dropped a bomb on that debate. Nothingness is not just empty space. And because the universe has two distinct ingredients, matter and mind, it must also have two distinct empty containers or voids. And the point where these two voids meet is where things get really interesting. Buckle up, because our good friend, the ether, is making a special appearance.
What if everything you think of as real, as solid as stuff, is a complete and total misunderstanding?
What if it's more like an illusion?
For, centuries we've all been working on this one assumption that if you zoom in far enough, you'll find the ultimate little building block, a tiny marble of stuff?
A particle, the final indivisible piece of reality. But the sources we're digging into today suggest that this might be the single biggest illusion we've ever bought into.
The idea is there is no stuff inside the atom. Nothing.
It's hollow.
I want you to picture a perfect, shiny red apple sitting on your kitchen counter. It looks incredible.
Photorealistic.
And then suddenly it glitches, but it doesn't break into smaller bits of apple. Instead, the red skin vanishes, and for a split second, you see it for what it is.
A hollow, shimmering wireframe. Just an outline of pure geometry.
And then even that just dissolves into static. Poof, gone.
What if everything, your hands, that apple, this entire world, is that unstable wireframe? That is the absolutely mind-bending idea we're unpacking today.
The theory proposes that matter isn't a substance at all, it's a boundary.
And think of it as scar tissue.
Scar tissue, I love that metaphor. It implies there was a conflict, some kind of injury.
An injury, a tension, a friction. It's the scar formed by the collision of two completely different, totally invisible worlds of nothingness.
Two kinds of nothing.
Two kinds of nothing that are both mathematically required to exist, but absolutely refuse to occupy the same space.
So we're not solid objects peacefully existing. We're the result of a permanent cosmic tug of war. And look, this isn't just some late-night philosophical fun.
Not at all. This deep dive is going to show how this one single idea, this unified model, claims to solve some of the biggest mysteries in science.
We're talking about why empty space isn't empty at all. It's actually boosting at the seams.
We're going to explain why your consciousness, your actual experience of hearing my voice right now, cannot possibly be generated inside your physical brain.
And maybe the craziest part, why physicists might be forced to bring back a forbidden concept, something they tried to bury 100 years ago.
The ether.
It's coming back, so get ready. We're going to demonstrate why something can't come from just one kind of nothing.
And why you, personally, are the necessary glitch in the very fabric of existence.
Let's do this.
Let's start with the biggest, most impossible question of all.
The ultimate metaphysical headache. Why is there something rather than nothing? I mean, every kid asks it, and every scientist kind of shuffles their feet.
They do, because standard science has never really been able to answer it cleanly. It's a logical dead end.
How so?
Well, think it through. You can't logically get existence out of absolute nothing. If there's truly absolutely nothing, no space, no time, no rules, no potential, then there's no mechanism for anything to ever happen.
Right, there's no spark to light the fire because there isn't even a concept of spark or fire.
Exactly. So to get around this, mainstream science, cosmology in particular, has been using what our sources call a foundational cheat code.
Okay, I like that. Let's expose the cheat. When we talk about the Big Bang, we say it came from some kind of pre-universe state. What do we call that?
The quantum vacuum.
Sounds pretty empty to me. Vacuum, cold, dark, nothing.
And that's the trick. That's where the cheat lies. Because the quantum vacuum, as defined by modern physics, is not nothing. It's not even close to nothing.
It's not empty. It's a boiling foam, I've heard it described as.
A boiling foam is a perfect description. It's a chaotic soup of virtual particles and fields that are constantly popping in and out of existence. It's incredibly active, and most importantly, it's highly structured.
And what's the most important part of that structure?
It already contains the fundamental rules of physics.
Wait, hold on. Let me get this straight. The question is, how did existence begin?
Right.
And the starting point for our explanation is a place that already contains the rules for gravity, the speed of light, and electromagnetism.
Precisely. You haven't explained the origin of the game at all. You've just assumed the rule book for the game was already sitting there on the table.
That's a massive assumption. It's assuming the laws of physics are eternal, that they exist before any matter or energy shows up.
It's an assumption that these sources really critique. They ask, why should the laws exist eternally? A far more logical starting point is that the laws of physics actually arise from the properties of the matter that exists.
So the players don't follow the rules. The players create the rules just by playing the game.
You got it. And if that's true, then the quantum vacuum isn't nothing. It's already something. It's a fully formed structure just waiting for the lights to turn on.
So to find true nothing, we have to go deeper. We have to strip away all the matter, all the energy, all the fields.
And all the laws of physics. Even logic itself, you could argue, because logic is a type of structure. You have to get rid of everything.
And what's left?
Well, that's where the whole system breaks down. The very idea of a single absolute nothingness creates a paradox.
Explain that. Why is absolute nothing impossible?
Because if nothing were absolute and singular, it would have to exclude the possibility of something ever existing. Its very nature would be the absence of all potential.
But we're here. We exist. I'm thinking about it right now.
And that's the refutation. Our mere existence, even just the existence of our consciousness observing this hypothetical void, proves that the void wasn't absolute nothing to begin with. It must have contained the potential for us.
So absolute nothingness is logically self-defeating. The moment you conceive of it, you break it.
You solve that paradox. To explain the undeniable reality that something is here, we have to accept the core proposal of this theory. There isn't just one type of nothing.
There are two.
Two fundamental, distinct, and necessary voids. And the conflict between them is what solves the origin problem once and for all.
Okay, this is the perfect hook. We're not talking about something from nothing anymore. We're talking about something from the war between two nothings. So let's meet the combatants.
To really get a grip on these two voids, we first have to dust off a very old, very powerful idea about the structure of reality. It's this idea of the three worlds.
I've heard of this. It goes all the way back to Plato, right? But even modern physicists like Roger Penrose are big champions of it.
They are. It's a surprisingly robust framework. Let's lay them out. First, you have the Platonic world.
The world of pure ideas.
Exactly. Pure, unchangeable logic, mathematics, geometric forms. The fact that 2 + 2 = 4 is true whether or not there are any physical objects to count. The perfect form of a circle exists even if no one ever draws one.
It's the realm of eternal, unbreakable truth. Got it.
Then you have world 2, the material world. This is the one we think we know best. It's the world of atoms, particles, energy, galaxies, all the measurable stuff that physics studies.
The stuff whose stuffness we are now seriously questioning.
You're getting it. And that brings us to world 3, the one that causes all the philosophical arguments.
The non-material world. Consciousness, the mind, subjective experience.
The redness of red, the feeling of joy, the stuff that science has the hardest time explaining. Now, this theory fully accepts the dualist premise. It says, yes, material something exists, and yes, non-material something exists.
Okay, so we're starting from a dualist standpoint.
And if those two types of something are real and fundamentally different, then it follows logically that their opposites, their voids, must also be real and different.
So there has to be a material nothing. What's left when you take away all the planets and atoms?
Empty physical space, the potential for matter.
And a non-material nothing. What's left when you take away all thoughts, feelings, and experiences?
The potential for consciousness. An empty mind, you could say.
Okay, I'm with you. We have two distinct voids. Now let's put them into motion. Let's get to the cinematic metaphor.
This is where it gets fun. I want you to imagine these two necessary voids. Let's give them colors to make it easier. The blue void for material space and the red void for consciousness, the non-material space.
Blue void and red void. Okay.
Now, imagine both of these infinite oceans trying to occupy the exact same physical location at the same time.
My brain just short-circuited. That's not possible. Two things can't be in the same place at the same time.
Precisely. And that impossibility is the engine of creation. This brings us to the crucial assumption of the model, what they call the Ansatz.
The Ansatz.
It's a German word. It just means a modeling assumption. And the Ansatz here is that these two nothings are mutually exclusive. They are like oil and water. They cannot interpenetrate at any given point in space.
So if a specific coordinate right here between us is occupied by the blue void of material potential,
then it absolutely necessarily excludes the red void of conscious potential from that exact same point, and vice versa.
This is where the cosmic tension comes from. They both have to exist. That's a core premise, but they can't overlap.
If the blue void won, if it filled all of space, the red world would vanish, and consciousness would be impossible, which violates our premise.
And if the red void won, the material world would disappear. So they're locked in a stalemate. They're forced to coexist.
And What is the only possible way for two mutually exclusive, necessary, infinite things to share the same container?
They have to form a boundary, a surface where they meet.
A continuous, shimmering surface where they are constantly touching, pushing, and competing for every single spatial location. The universe in this view is not a box full of stuff. It is a giant dynamic interface between two competing types of emptiness.
I have to push back a little here. It's a good question. If they're both infinite voids, why would they form some complex, crumpled up boundary?
You mean, why not just a simple flat sheet?
Yeah. Why doesn't the blue void just take the left half of the universe and the red void take the right half? They'd touch along one perfectly straight line and the non-overlap rule would be satisfied. Simple.
That's a brilliant question, and it gets us right to the origin of complexity. The answer is that such a simple arrangement would be incredibly unstable. The boundary isn't passive, it has to maintain its continuity.
What do you mean by that?
Imagine two infinite, perfectly balanced forces pushing against each other. The slightest fluctuation, the tiniest initial imperfection, would cause the boundary to bend and curve. The system wants to minimize its tension, and it does that by maximizing its surface area while staying connected.
So a flat sheet is actually the most tense, most unstable configuration.
In a sense, yes. The constant competition, this necessary pushing and pulling, is what generates all the complex folds and wrinkles and structures. That friction is existence itself.
And we live in those wrinkles.
We are the wrinkles. We're about to see that the structural result of that cosmic friction is everything you call solid matter.
So we're standing on this boundary line, this glowing film where material nothing grinds against conscious nothing.
And here it is, the central concept of this whole deep dive. Matter is the interface. It's the boundary structure. It is not a substance that exists on or in the boundary.
It is the boundary. So when we talk about fundamental particles like electrons or quarks, what are they then, if they're not little balls of stuff?
They are the specific, localized shapes of the cracks in the void.
Let's go back to your scar tissue idea and combine it with the tectonic fault line.
Okay, I like that.
On one side, you have the stable, predictable continent of the material void. On the other, the deep, stable ocean of the conscious void. They are both simple and uniform on their own.
But where they meet, at the fault line, all hell breaks loose.
All hell breaks loose. The pressure, the grinding, the tension creates immense, complex structures. You get earthquakes, volcanoes, mountain ranges. Matter is the earthquake. It's the persistent, complex structure that can only arise from the tension between the two otherwise stable voids.
So when physicists in a particle accelerator are smashing things together, hoping to find the ultimate solid building block,
They're chasing a ghost. They're looking for a substance that simply doesn't exist. They're trying to find the inside of a thing that is, by its very nature, only an outline.
that solves a huge philosophical problem in physics, doesn't it? The fact that we've never actually seen a particle. Never. We've never observed an ultimate solid thing itself. What do we observe? We observe its relational capacity. We see how it interacts with our measurement tools, which are also made of matter. We see the shape of its energy field, the outline of the interaction.
But we never ever see the stuff inside.
And these sources make a very powerful argument from this. They say, since we can never empirically observe this inner substance, why are we assuming it exists at all? It's an unnecessary, redundant concept.
It's Occam's razor. If you can explain everything perfectly with just the relational structure of the boundary, you don't need to add an unobservable stuff inside it.
And that relational structure is enough because the boundary itself has inherent properties.
Okay, here's my big pushback. This is where it has to get real. If an atom is just the shape of a crack in the void, why do these cracks have consistent, discrete properties? Why does an electron always have the same charge and spin?
That's the test, isn't it?
And more importantly, if it's just a shimmering outline, a ghost, why does it have mass? Why can't I walk through this wall? Why does it feel solid?
These are the ultimate questions for this theory, and it has answers. First, the discreteness, the fact that particles have specific properties, comes from the boundary-seeking stable energy states.
Like patterns in the sand on a vibrating drumhead.
That's a fantastic analogy. A vibrating sheet will naturally form stable patterns at certain frequencies. The particles, electrons, quarks, are the most stable, persistent geometric forms that the boundary can settle into.
So the boundary's own need for stability dictates the particle zoo we see.
Exactly. Now, for mass and solidity, this is where the two-sided nature of the boundary becomes critical. Mass, according to this model, is a direct manifestation of the surface pressure being exerted by the two voids against each other.
So when I push my hand against this desk, what I'm feeling as solid is?
You are feeling the concentrated tension, the immense pressure gradient between the material nothing on one side and the non-material nothing on the other, both pushing to maintain the structure of that boundary. That resistance to being changed is what we call inertia and mass.
Wow. That's really elegant. So the reason we have complex galaxies and planets and people and not just one big flat sheet is because that boundary is inherently unstable and always moving.
It's always in motion. It has to maintain its continuity, but any arrangement is arbitrary. So you get what's called entropic motion, constant change. And if you consider our universe to be a closed system,
then the boundary has to be a closed surface, like a balloon.
Right. And a closed boundary creates immense internal surface pressure. That pressure forces it to undulate, to vibrate, to create complex structures. It becomes a continuously vibrating wave.
And the shapes of that wave are the particles we see.
You're starting to see it. We are not accidental clumps of dust in a dead void. We are the inevitable necessary friction that arises when two fundamental realities try to occupy the same space. You, the listener, are the glitch. And you're not a bug in the system. You're a necessary feature.
That tension defines absolutely everything, including the fact that you can even think about what we're saying right now.
Which is the perfect segue.
Okay, if your sense of reality just dissolved into a shimmering, undulating sheet of pure relational tension, that means we're doing our job. But don't let this deep dive end here. We are only at the halfway point.
We're just getting warmed up.
We're about to use this friction model to finally solve the problem of consciousness and bring back a concept in physics so forbidden they thought it was gone for good. So if you're enjoying this, please like and subscribe to the deep dive and consider joining our memberships.
We absolutely rely on your support to keep pulling the universe apart like this, one wild theoretical proposal at a time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Now, let's solve the soul.
Let's do it. So, with this new tool, this idea that matter is a dual aspect boundary, we can finally go after the big one, the hard problem of consciousness.
Which is, in simple terms, how does physical stuff, like the neurons in my brain, create a non-physical experience, like the color red or the feeling of sadness?
The materialist view struggles here because there's this enormous unbridgeable gap. How does a purely physical computation, a bunch of firing synapses, suddenly leap across a chasm and become a subjective feeling?
Right, it's the classic conflict. The materialists say the brain makes consciousness like a factory makes a car. The dualists say they're two totally separate things, which then creates the problem of how do they talk to each other?
This model just erases that problem. It says the physical brain does not produce consciousness at all.
It doesn't produce it.
No. Instead, the physical brain is the most complex, finely tuned interface structure in the known universe. It's the most intricate part of the boundary layer in our specific region of space.
So the brain isn't the TV station broadcasting the show.
No.
It's the TV set, the antenna, that's exquisitely designed to pick up a signal that already exists.
That's the perfect analogy. The conscious experience, the red void, the non-material reality, is the force that is constantly pressing against the matter boundary. It's intrinsically connected to the matter because the matter's existence is defined by that connection. The feeling is on the other side of the boundary, but it's inseparable from the structure.
This feels like it could be a truce in the centuries-long war between the different types of dualism. Let's break that down. How does it resolve them?
Let's start with what's called property dualism. That's the idea that maybe everything physical has both a material aspect and a non-material or mental aspect.
The panpsychism idea, that even a rock has some tiny speck of consciousness. Critics always say, why? That seems so arbitrary.
Right. But in our model, it is not arbitrary at all. It is necessary. Because matter is formed at the intersection of both voids, it must inherently possess both material and non-material aspects. The non-material aspect isn't some weird magical add-on. It's a required feature for the boundary to even exist and hold its shape.
So property dualism is solved by necessity. The boundary has to be two-sided to be a boundary.
Exactly. Now, what about substance dualism?
Yeah.
This is the one Descartes championed. Two different substances. This is where critics always ask the killer question. Where is the non-material substance? Where is the soul located?
And how does it interact with the body if it's not physical?
Here, the answer is simple. The unified substances, the two kinds of nothing, lie behind the boundary. The non-material substance is permanently located on the other side of the material world, intrinsically connected through the interface. It's not floating around somewhere. It is the other half of the equation that defines reality itself.
It's tethered. It's the literal flip side of the coin. The location of consciousness is everywhere matter is, just on the other side of the film.
And this solves the famous mathematical gap problem. If the two realms are separate, how does a physical event cause a mental event? How does a needle prick cause the feeling of pain? You need some mechanism to cross that gap.
But here there is no gap to cross.
None at all. The two worlds form one single co-moving boundary. A cause and its effect are just the synchronized motion of both material and non-material sides of the boundary moving together. It's like a two-sided wave.
So if a photon from a red wall hits my eye, the material structure of my brain's boundary shifts.
And because it's a single unified sheet, the non-material aspect shifts simultaneously and in perfect sync to create the experience of redness. There's no chasm, no messenger, no delay.
They're locked together. This leads to a really profound solution for another classic thought experiment.
The philosophical zombie.
My favorite. The pea zombie is a perfect replica of a human being. It talks, it walks, it acts sad or happy. But on the inside, there's nothing. No experience. The lights are on, but nobody's home.
And materialism has a really hard time with this because if consciousness is just an emergent property of computation, their models can't definitively prove why we aren't all pea zombies. Why should that computation be accompanied by an inner life?
So how does the two voids model make the pea zombie impossible?
It's logically impossible in this framework because matter requires the non-material void pressing against it to form its structure in the first place. The structure cannot exist without its non-material counterpart. The moment you define a complex material structure like a brain,
You have simultaneously defined its intrinsic, inseparable, non-material aspect. You can't have the structure without the experience.
you can't have one side of the coin without the other. So a zombie matter without consciousness is a contradiction in terms.
That is a seriously powerful philosophical conclusion. It's not just that we have consciousness, it's that reality's structure makes it unavoidable.
It is unavoidable. And it creates a beautiful truce between determinism and free will. From the material side, the boundary's motion looks purely deterministic. But from the non-material side, it might look like consciousness is guiding the motion. The truth is that both sides co-cause the unified movement. They're locked in a dance.
A dance that leads us back to a piece of forbidden knowledge from the history of physics.
It's time to talk about the aether.
Let's set the stage. For decades, the very idea of the ether was a punchline in physics. It was this old-fashioned 19th century idea of a background medium, a fixed substance that filled all of space.
It was completely ridiculed. After Einstein and the Michelson-Morley experiments, the new thinking was that space was just an abstract, empty grid, a backdrop, not a substance.
They famously tried to detect the aether wind as the Earth moved through it, and they found nothing. So, case closed. The ether was dead.
But, as our sources point out, killing the ether created a massive conceptual hole in physics, a hole that has never really been filled. It has to do with the very nature of motion, and specifically, the origin of inertia.
This is where we get to the famous spinning bucket mystery.
Mach's principle. It's a brilliant thought experiment. Imagine you are in a bucket of water floating in the middle of a completely empty universe. There are no stars, no galaxies, nothing. Just you and the bucket.
It's totally dark and empty.
Now you start to spin the bucket. What happens to the water?
The water is forced outwards by centrifugal force, and the surface becomes curved, climbing up the sides of the bucket.
Right. But here's the question. If space is truly empty and purely relational, what are you spinning against? What external reference frame is telling the water that it's rotating?
There's nothing there. In a purely relational universe, rotation should be meaningless. But we know it's real. I can feel it in my gut when I spin in a chair.
Ernst Mach proposed that inertia, that resistance to acceleration, must be caused by the gravitational pull of all the distant matter in the universe. The stars, the galaxies.
And Einstein tried to bake this into general relativity. He linked the gravitational field to all that distant mass.
He did, but the solution was never fully satisfying. And these sources point out two huge problems with it. What's the first one?
The speed of the effect.
Exactly. If inertia is caused by the gravity of distant galaxies, that influence should have to travel to you. It should propagate at the speed of light.
But it doesn't. When I spin in my chair, I feel the centrifugal force instantly. There's no delay waiting for a signal to arrive from the Andromeda galaxy.
The effect is instantaneous, which strongly suggests the reference frame isn't distant and propagated. It has to be local and pervasive, everywhere.
And what's the second problem?
The second issue is that general relativity just kicks the can down the road. It replaces absolute space with a gravitational field. But the field itself still needs to be grounded in a reference frame. It doesn't solve the fundamental problem of what motion is relative to.
And this is where the two voids theory comes roaring back in with a stunningly simple solution.
It restores the forbidden concept. The interface of the two nothings, this boundary sheet that constitutes all matter, is the new dynamic ether.
So it's the background reference frame.
It is the background reference frame against which all matter measures its own motion because matter is made of it.
My mind is blown. So when I spin, I'm not spinning in an abstract void. I am creating a rotational motion against the physical, reactive, tension-filled medium of the boundary itself.
And that friction, that resistance from the boundary to changing its shape relative to you, is inertia.
That fully resolves Mach's principle without needing faster-than-light signals from distant stars. The reference frame is right here. It's the fabric of space itself.
Exactly. Space is not an abstract grid. It is a physical, reactive medium made of this fundamental tension. Inertia emerges locally and naturally.
This also neatly explains why the old Michelson-Morley experiment failed, doesn't it?
It does. The old aether was imagined as a fixed, static sea that the Earth was moving through.
So you should be able to measure the wind as you sail through it.
But if the aether is the boundary layer, and matter is made from the boundary layer, then the local aether structure moves with the Earth. You can't measure your speed relative to a medium that you're an intrinsic part of and that moves in perfect sync with you.
The boundary isn't a static pond, it's a fluid, co-moving river, and we are one of the currents within it.
It's an absolutely brilliant synthesis. It brings back the necessary function of the aether, the reference frame, while completely avoiding the problems of the old static model.
It's elegant. It's almost too neat.
And it leads us to our final, profound shift in perspective.
We started this journey by trying to dissolve the idea of solid stuff, by making reality seem less real.
And we're ending with a vision of reality that is more interconnected, more grounded, and more meaningful than we could have imagined.
We are not lonely little objects floating in a cold, dead void. That entire picture is wrong.
We are the complex, shimmering patterns that inevitably form when two kinds of emptiness press against each other.
We are the necessary boundary of their intersection.
And all the things we cherish, complexity, life, even our own consciousness, are not random accidents in a meaningless universe.
They are the friction. They are the beautiful, intricate results of the necessary and continuous tension between the physical and the non-material aspects of this one single boundary sheet. It's an incredible wrap-up. Let's just quickly review what this one idea gives us. It answers why there is something rather than nothing.
By proposing two incompatible nothings.
It solves the ancient problems of dualism by making matter a two-sided interface.
Unifying the physical and the mental.
And it finally grounds inertia in motion in the very fabric of space by restoring a dynamic, co-moving aether.
It's a remarkably powerful and simple framework. And it leads us to one last speculative but very tantalizing connection to some of the most cutting-edge ideas in modern physics.
Don't leave us hanging. What is it?
The holographic principle.
Of course. The idea coming out of black hole physics that our three-dimensional universe might just be a projection, an illusion encoded on a distant two-dimensional surface.
And look at how perfectly our model fits with that. If matter is not a volume-filling substance, but is instead the complex structures, the mountains and valleys, formed on the two-dimensional interface between the voids,
then reality is fundamentally defined by the dynamics of a 2D sheet.
The 3D world we perceive, the feeling of solidity and depth, is simply the manifestation of concentrated surface tension and complex structure within that 2D boundary.
So if you could perfectly map their relationships on that surface, you would have a complete description of everything in the universe.
You would have everything. And that leads to the final takeaway. If thingness, the idea of an inner substance, is ultimately redundant, if only the relational structure matters,
then reality isn't about what things are. It's about how they relate to each other.
Which means we are not isolated objects at all.
And that means you, listening to this right now, are not an object. You are a continuous, necessary relationship.
A relationship between the infinite material void and the infinite non-material void. And that relationship is the most real, the most essential, and the most persistent feature of the entire cosmos. Now go explore the friction.